In the quiet countryside of Montana, a lone farmer noticed his beloved horse mysteriously vanishing every night without a trace, only to return by sunrise. Determined to uncover the truth, he decided to follow his faithful companion one starlit evening, but what he discovered that night left him sobbing uncontrollably, forever changing his perspective on life and the deep bonds we share with animals. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Jack Morrison wiped the sweat from his weathered brow as he gazed across the rolling hills of Whispering Meadows Ranch. The setting sun painted the sky in brilliant shades of orange and purple, casting long shadows across the weathered barn that had stood sentinel over his family's land for 3 generations. At 62, Jack had spent most of his life working this land, but lately something strange had been happening. Something that defied explanation. His prized quarter horse, Thunder, a magnificent black stallion with a white blaze down his face, had developed a peculiar habit. Every night, like clockwork, Thunder would disappear from his stable, only to return just before dawn, looking somewhat tired but otherwise unharmed. At first, Jack thought he might be imagining things, that perhaps age was finally catching up with him, but as the days turned into weeks, the pattern became undeniable. "This doesn't make any sense," Jack muttered to himself, running his calloused hand along Thunder's muscular neck. The horse nickered softly, pressing his head against Jack's shoulder in a familiar gesture of affection. "Where do you go, old friend?" Thunder had been Jack's constant companion since the passing of his wife Sarah 5 years ago. After losing her to cancer, Jack had retreated into himself, finding solace only in the daily rhythms of farm life and the quiet companionship of his animals, especially Thunder. The horse seemed to understand Jack's grief, often standing quietly beside him during those long, lonely evenings when memories of Sarah threatened to overwhelm him. Living alone on the vast expanse of Whispering Meadows wasn't easy, but Jack had always prided himself on his self-reliance. His daughter, Emma, lived in the city with her own family, visiting when she could but busy with her life as a pediatrician. She worried about her father's solitude, but Jack assured her he was fine, that the farm and his animals were all the company he needed. But Thunder's mysterious nighttime wanderings had begun to unsettle him. Each evening, Jack would secure the stable door with a sturdy latch, checking it twice, as he'd done for decades. Yet somehow, by morning, he'd find Thunder's stall empty, only to discover the horse grazing peacefully in the meadow as the first rays of sunlight crept over the horizon. "Maybe I'm not latching it properly," Jack reasoned aloud, demonstrating the motion to himself for the 100th time. But deep down he knew that wasn't it. The latch was simple but secure, and Thunder had never shown any interest in escaping before. Something else was going on. Something that tugged at Jack's curiosity and concern in equal measure. The local veterinarian, Dr. Thompson, had visited just last week for Thunder's regular checkup, and Jack had mentioned the strange behavior. "Horses are creatures of habit, Jack," she'd said, running expert hands along Thunder's legs. "If he's breaking routine, there's usually a reason. Have you noticed anything else unusual?" Jack shook his head, watching as Thunder stood perfectly still for the examination. "No, that's just it. He's completely normal during the day. Same appetite, same temperament. It's like he's living a double life or something." Dr. Thompson had laughed at that, but her eyes held a thoughtful expression. You know, horses are more perceptive than we give them credit for. They can sense things we can't, understand things we might miss. Maybe Thunder's trying to tell you something." Those words had stayed with Jack, echoing in his mind during the quiet evenings as he watched Thunder from his porch. The horse would stand at the fence, gazing out across the meadow as if waiting for something, his ears pricked forward in anticipation. When Jack would check on him before bed, Thunder would turn those intelligent eyes on him, seeming almost apologetic about what they both knew would happen once darkness fell. The mystery began to weigh on Jack, disturbing his sleep. He'd lie awake, straining to hear the sound of hoofbeats in the night, wondering where his faithful companion was going and why. The not knowing was the hardest part. After losing Sarah, Jack had learned to live with uncertainty, but this was different. This felt like Thunder was keeping a secret, one that Jack needed to understand. One evening, as Jack sat on his porch watching the sunset, an idea began to take shape in his mind. He'd always respected Thunder's independence, treated him more like a partner than a possession. But now, concern for his friend's safety overrode his usual hands-off approach. "I think it's time we figured this out, buddy," he said softly, making his decision. That night, instead of heading to bed after securing the stable, Jack settled into the old wooden chair in the corner of the barn. He'd brought a thermos of coffee and a warm blanket, determined to stay awake and witness whatever was about to unfold. Thunder watched him curiously from his stall, occasionally nickering softly, as if asking what his human friend was up to. Hours passed, marked only by the gentle sounds of horses breathing and the distant cry of a lone coyote. Jack felt his eyelids growing heavy, the familiar weight of exhaustion pulling at him. But just as he was about to give up and head inside, a sound caught his attention. The subtle shift of movement from Thunder's stall. Fully alert now, Jack watched in amazement as Thunder carefully manipulated the latch with his teeth, displaying a dexterity he'd never suspected the horse possessed. The door swung open silently, and Thunder stepped out, pausing to shake his mane in the dim light filtering through the barn windows. "Well, I'll be damned," Jack whispered, careful not to startle his clever friend. Thunder's ears flicked in his direction, but the horse showed no sign of concern at being discovered. Instead, he turned his head toward Jack and nickered softly, as if inviting him to follow. For a moment, Jack hesitated. He was no longer young, and trailing after a horse in the dark wasn't exactly what his doctor would recommend. But curiosity and concern won out over caution. "All right, Thunder," he said quietly, rising from his chair. "Show me what's so important out there." Thunder waited patiently as Jack grabbed a flashlight and his old denim jacket. Together they stepped out into the cool night air, the moon casting enough light to see by, but leaving plenty of shadows among the trees that bordered the property. Jack expected Thunder to break into a run, but instead the horse moved at a deliberate walk, occasionally glancing back as if to ensure his human companion was keeping up. Their path led them away from the farm buildings and into the rolling pastures beyond. Jack recognized the route. It was one he and Thunder often took during their daytime rides, leading to the old creek that marked the boundary of his property. But why would Thunder come here at night? As they approached the creek, Thunder's pace slowed even further. The horse moved with careful steps now, picking his way through the darkness with obvious familiarity. Jack followed, his heart pounding with anticipation and a touch of anxiety. Whatever had been drawing Thunder out night after night, he was about to discover it. The answer, when it came, stopped Jack in his tracks, the flashlight beam frozen, on a sight he never expected to see. There, in a small clearing by the creek, illuminated by patches of moonlight filtering through the trees, was a scene that would forever change his understanding of his faithful companion. In the small clearing by the creek, Thunder approached a fallen tree where an injured fawn lay curled up, its leg awkwardly positioned. The young deer lifted its head weakly at their approach, and to Jack's astonishment showed no fear. Instead, it seemed to brighten at the sight of Thunder, attempting to rise before settling back down with a soft bleat of discomfort. Thunder moved forward with incredible gentleness, lowering his massive head to nuzzle the fawn's soft fur. The tenderness in the gesture brought tears to Jack's eyes as he watched his powerful quarter horse, known for his strength and speed, demonstrate such delicate care for this vulnerable creature. "So this is where you've been sneaking off to," Jack whispered, his voice thick with emotion. He approached slowly, careful not to startle either animal. The fawn's leg appeared to be injured, possibly broken, explaining why it hadn't moved from this spot. But what struck Jack most was how Thunder had apparently been visiting the young deer each night, standing guard and offering companionship. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. As Jack watched, Thunder began grazing nearby, keeping a protective eye on both the fawn and the surrounding area. It was then that Jack noticed other signs around the clearing, patches of flattened grass where Thunder had clearly spent hours standing vigil, and even what appeared to be attempts to shelter the fawn from the elements. By positioning himself to block the wind, the revelation hit Jack like a physical force. While he had been worrying about Thunder's disappearances, his horse had been demonstrating a level of compassion that challenged everything Jack thought he knew about animals. The sight of his strong, proud horse choosing to spend his nights caring for an injured fawn stirred something deep within Jack's soul. Memories of Sarah flooded back. How she had always insisted that animals possessed a wisdom and empathy that humans often failed to recognize. "They know things we don't, Jack," she would say, watching Thunder gallop across the meadow. "They feel things more purely than we do because they're not clouded by all our human complications." Jack settled onto a nearby log, overwhelmed by the scene before him. Thunder continued his gentle ministrations, occasionally stepping away to graze, but always returning to check on his small charge. The fawn seemed to draw comfort from the horse's presence, its eyes growing heavy as Thunder stood guard. "You've been taking care of this little one all by yourself, haven't you?" Jack murmured, understanding dawning in his heart. "Every single night. You've been out here being a guardian angel." The words caught in his throat as he realized the profound lesson Thunder was teaching him about compassion and responsibility. The cool night air carried the sweet scent of wildflowers, and crickets chirped their endless symphony. Jack found himself transported back to countless evenings spent with Sarah on their front porch, discussing their dreams for the farm and their hopes for the future. She had always wanted Whispering Meadows to be more than just a working ranch. She'd envisioned it as a sanctuary for all creatures in need. "You're fulfilling her dream, aren't you, boy?" Jack said softly, watching Thunder's careful movements around the fawn. "You're turning this place into exactly what she always wanted it to be." The realization brought fresh tears to his eyes, but these were different from the tears of grief he'd grown accustomed to. These were tears of understanding, of purpose found anew. As the night deepened, Jack made a decision. He couldn't leave the fawn out here, vulnerable to predators and the elements, even with Thunder's protection. But he also couldn't separate these two unlikely friends who had formed such a remarkable bond. He needed to find a way to help them, both. With careful movements, Jack approached the fawn, speaking in low, soothing tones. Thunder watched attentively but showed no signs of anxiety, seeming to trust that his human friend would do the right thing. The fawn, too, remained calm, perhaps understanding on some level that help was finally at hand. Jack examined the injured leg as best he could in the dim light. The injury didn't appear fresh. The fawn had likely been stranded here for days, surviving thanks to Thunder's vigilant care. The thought of his horse making this journey night after night, standing guard over this helpless creature, filled Jack with a profound sense of pride and humility. "We're going to help your little friend, Thunder," Jack promised, his voice steady despite the emotion welling up inside him. "But we're going to do it right. We're going to do it the way Sarah would have wanted." The decision crystallized in his mind. Whispering Meadows needed to change. The vast acres of land that had been dedicated solely to raising horses could become something more, something that honored both Sarah's memory and Thunder's remarkable display of compassion. The farm could become a sanctuary, a place where injured wildlife could find healing and protection. As Jack formulated his plan, Thunder remained close to the fawn, occasionally touching his nose to the young deer's fur in a gesture of reassurance. The bond between them was undeniable, a pure expression of care that transcended the natural boundaries between species. It was a reminder that compassion knew no limits, that kindness could bridge any gap. The first light of dawn was beginning to paint the eastern sky when Jack finally stood, his joints stiff from sitting on the log, but his mind clear with purpose. He needed to call Dr. Thompson, arrange for proper care for the fawn, and begin the process of transforming Whispering Meadows into the sanctuary it was meant to be. Thunder raised his head, meeting Jack's gaze with those intelligent eyes that seemed to hold such wisdom. In that moment, Jack understood that his horse had led him here not just to reveal the secret of his nightly disappearances, but to show him a new path forward, a way to honor Sarah's memory while creating something meaningful and lasting. The trip back to the farm was made with renewed energy, despite the sleepless night. Jack's mind was already racing with plans and possibilities. The old barn could be converted into a rehabilitation space for injured wildlife. The south pasture, with its gentle slope and protected location, would be perfect for recovering animals to regain their strength. As they walked, Jack found himself sharing his thoughts aloud with Thunder, who listened with pricked ears, as if understanding every word. "We'll need help, of course," Jack mused. "Can't do this alone. Maybe Emma would want to be involved. She's always loved animals, just like her mother." The idea of involving his daughter in this new chapter of Whispering Meadows filled Jack with hope. They had drifted apart somewhat after Sarah's passing, both struggling with their grief in different ways. But this could bring them together again, give them a shared purpose that honored Sarah's memory while creating something new and meaningful. Thunder's gentle nickering seemed to approve of these plans, his steps light despite the long night of vigilance. As they approached the stable, the sun was just beginning to peek over the horizon, painting the world in soft golden light. It was a new day in more ways than one, the dawn of a different kind of life for Whispering Meadows and its inhabitants. Jack's first call was to Dr. Thompson, who listened with growing interest as he explained the situation. "I'll be there within the hour," she promised, the excitement clear in her voice. "And Jack, this is incredible. What Thunder's done, what you're planning to do, it's exactly what this community needs." As he waited for the vet to arrive, Jack began making notes, listing all the changes that would need to be made, the resources they would need, the people they should contact. With each item he wrote down, the vision became clearer, more real. Thunder stood nearby, watching his human friend with what seemed like approval, occasionally nudging Jack's shoulder as if offering encouragement. The whole time, Jack's thoughts kept returning to the scene by the creek, the powerful horse standing guard over the vulnerable fawn, the pure expression of compassion that had brought tears to his eyes. It was more than just an isolated act of kindness. It was a message, a reminder that sometimes the most profound teachings come from the most unexpected sources. "You've been trying to show me this all along, haven't you?" Jack said to Thunder, pausing in his writing to stroke the horse's neck. "That there's more to life than just getting by, that we all have the capacity to help others, to make a difference." Thunder's soft wicker seemed to confirm this understanding, his wise eyes holding Jack's gaze. Dr. Thompson arrived just as Jack was finishing his preliminary plans. She listened intently as he led her to the creek, explaining Thunder's nightly vigils and his vision for transforming the farm. The vet's expertise would be crucial in establishing proper care protocols and ensuring they could provide the best possible help to injured wildlife. As they approached the clearing, Thunder moved ahead, eager to check on his small friend. The fawn was exactly where they had left it, and Dr. Thompson's examination confirmed what Jack had suspected: a broken leg that, while serious, could heal with proper care. "This little one is lucky," she said, gently wrapping the injury. "Without Thunder's protection, it wouldn't have survived this long. You've got yourself a very special horse, Jack." Her words carried the weight of professional admiration, but there was something more in her voice, a recognition of the extraordinary bond between human and animal that made such miracles possible. The transformation of Whispering Meadows began almost immediately. Jack's phone call to Emma that morning had brought tears to her voice as he described Thunder's actions and his plans for the farm. "Dad, this is exactly what Mom would have wanted," she said, her words catching with emotion. "I'm coming home this weekend. We'll figure this out together." The news of Thunder's compassionate vigil spread quickly through the small farming community. Neighbors who had known Jack and Sarah for decades stopped by, offering help, resources, and encouragement. Many brought stories of their own encounters with injured wildlife, expressing how much a local sanctuary was needed. Matthew Cooper, the town's retired carpenter, arrived unannounced one morning with his toolbox and a truck full of lumber. "Sarah used to talk about this dream of hers," he said, studying Jack's rough sketches for converting part of the barn. "Always knew she was onto something special. Let's make it happen, Jack." Within days, the old barn began its metamorphosis. The south wing, previously used for storage, was reimagined as a rehabilitation space. Matthew's skilled hands crafted specialized enclosures, each designed to provide comfort and security for different types of injured wildlife. Jack worked alongside him, finding healing in the physical labor and shared purpose. Thunder, meanwhile, had become something of a local celebrity. Dr. Thompson had shared his story with other veterinarians, and soon wildlife specialists from neighboring counties were reaching out, eager to be part of this unique endeavor. The horse's gentle nature with injured animals became legendary, his instinctive understanding of their needs surpassing even human expertise. The fawn, now named Hope by Emma's children, became the sanctuary's first official resident. Under Dr. Thompson's care and Thunder's continued attention, the young deer's leg began to heal. Jack set up a comfortable recovery space in the converted barn, but made sure it was close enough to Thunder's stall that the unlikely friends could still see each other. Emma's arrival that weekend marked another turning point. As a pediatrician, she brought valuable medical knowledge and a fresh perspective to the project. "Dad," she said, watching Thunder interact with Hope through the enclosure, "this could be more than just a wildlife sanctuary. Think about what this could mean for children with special needs or trauma. Animals have a way of healing human hearts, too." Her words sparked a new dimension to Jack's vision. He remembered how Sarah had always believed in the healing power of animals, how she'd seen something special in every creature that crossed their path. The sanctuary could become a place of healing for both animals and humans, a testament to the transformative power of compassion. The first opportunity to test this expanded vision came unexpectedly. A local counselor working with troubled youth heard about Thunder's story and reached out to Jack. "I have a student," she explained, "who hasn't spoken a word since losing his parents in an accident. Would it be possible for him to visit?" Jack agreed, and the following Tuesday a quiet boy named Michael arrived at Whispering Meadows. Thunder, who had been grazing in the paddock, immediately approached the fence. When he saw the child, the horse's gentle presence seemed to draw the boy out of his shell. Within minutes, Michael was reaching through the fence to stroke Thunder's nose. "This is the most response we've seen from him in months," the counselor whispered to Jack, watching as Michael's tense shoulders gradually relaxed. By the end of the visit, the boy had whispered a single word: horse. It was the first time he had spoken in 6 months. The success of Michael's visit opened new possibilities. Emma helped develop a program combining animal therapy with wildlife rehabilitation, creating opportunities for healing on multiple levels. Children facing various challenges found comfort and confidence working with the sanctuary's recovering animals, while Thunder remained a steady, calming presence for all. Local schools began organizing field trips to Whispering Meadows, where students learned about wildlife conservation and the importance of compassion. Jack found himself sharing Thunder's story again and again, watching young faces light up with understanding as they realized that kindness knew no boundaries. The sanctuary's reputation grew, and soon they were receiving calls from across the state about injured wildlife in need of care. Each new arrival seemed to strengthen Thunder's remarkable abilities. The horse showed an uncanny knack for knowing which animals needed extra attention, often standing near the enclosures of those struggling the most. One particularly memorable case involved a young wolf pup found abandoned and injured. Many had doubted their ability to care for such a wild creature, but Thunder's calm presence seemed to soothe the frightened animal. The horse would stand near the pup's enclosure for hours, much as he had done with Hope, offering silent companionship that somehow bridged the gap between wild and domestic. As the sanctuary evolved, Jack noticed profound changes in himself as well. The grief that had weighed him down since Sarah's passing began to lift, replaced by a sense of purpose and connection. He saw her dream taking shape in ways he never could have imagined, guided by the wisdom of a horse who seemed to understand the true meaning of compassion. Emma began spending more time at the farm, bringing her children on weekends to help with the animals. The grandchildren, who had once been shy around their quiet grandfather, now ran to him with excited stories about the sanctuary's residents. Family dinners became a regular occurrence, filled with laughter and plans for the sanctuary's future. The community's support continued to grow. Local businesses donated supplies, veterinary students volunteered their time, and neighboring farms offered hay and feed. What had started as one horse's act of kindness had sparked a movement of compassion that rippled through the entire region. Thunder's nightly visits to Hope continued until the fawn was strong enough to return to the wild. The day they released her back into the forest was emotional for everyone involved. As they watched the young deer disappear into the trees, Jack noticed Thunder's proud stance, as if the horse understood the significance of the moment. That evening, as Jack sat on his porch watching the sunset, Thunder grazed nearby, occasionally, lifting his head to gaze toward the woods where Hope had disappeared. The horse's quiet wisdom had not only saved a young deer's life, but had also shown Jack a new way forward, a path that honored Sarah's memory while creating something uniquely beautiful. "You know, old friend," Jack said softly, "sometimes the greatest teachers don't say a word. They just show us the way through their actions." Thunder lifted his head at Jack's voice, those wise eyes seeming to hold all the understanding in the world. In that moment, Jack felt Sarah's presence more strongly than he had in years, as if she was smiling down on what their farm had become. The transformation of Whispering Meadows continued to unfold in ways that surprised and inspired everyone involved. Each new day brought fresh opportunities to witness the healing power of compassion, whether through an injured animal's recovery or a troubled child's first smile. Thunder remained at the heart of it all, a constant reminder that love and kindness could bridge any divide. News outlets began picking up the story of the sanctuary and its remarkable horse. Journalists were moved to tears as they witnessed Thunder's gentle interactions with injured wildlife and struggling children. The horse's story resonated with people far beyond their small community, inspiring others to look for ways to make a difference in their own corners of the world. One evening, as Jack watched Thunder make his nightly rounds of the sanctuary's enclosures, he reflected on how a simple act of following his horse had led to such profound changes. What had begun in tears of emotion had blossomed into a legacy of healing and hope, touching countless lives in ways he never could have imagined. The sanctuary had become more than just a place for injured wildlife. It was a testament to the transformative power of compassion, a living tribute to Sarah's vision, and a reminder that sometimes the greatest wisdom comes from the silent teachers who show us the way through their actions. Thunder had not only saved a fawn that night by the creek, he had shown Jack and countless others the true meaning of love, healing, and purpose. As autumn painted Whispering Meadows in vibrant hues of gold and crimson, the sanctuary faced its first real challenge. A severe storm was forecast to hit the region, threatening the safety of both the rehabilitating animals and the sanctuary's structures. Jack stood in the newly renovated barn, studying the weather radar on his tablet. With growing concern, "We need to prepare for the worst," he told Emma, who had arrived early to help secure the property. "This could be the biggest storm we've seen in years." Thunder, standing in his stall, seemed to sense the tension. His ears pricked forward attentively as they discussed emergency preparations. The sanctuary had grown significantly over the past months, now housing various injured wildlife, including several deer, a family of raccoons, 2 red-tailed hawks, and even a young mountain lion recovering from a leg injury. Each animal required specific care and protection from the approaching storm. Dr. Thompson arrived with additional medical supplies, her face etched with determination. "We've contacted other shelters in the area," she reported. "They're ready to take in any animals we need to evacuate." The sanctuary's reputation for excellence had built strong relationships with similar facilities across the state. As they worked to reinforce enclosures and stock emergency supplies, Jack noticed Thunder's unusual behavior. The horse seemed restless, repeatedly looking toward the forest edge, where dark clouds were beginning to gather. Years of experience had taught Jack to trust his companion's instincts. "What is it, boy?" Jack approached Thunder's stall, laying a gentle hand on his neck. The horse's muscles were tense beneath his sleek coat, his nostrils flaring as he caught the changing wind. Suddenly, Thunder let out a sharp whinny, his gaze fixed intensely on a specific point in the tree line. Following Thunder's line of sight, Jack spotted movement among the shadows. To his amazement, a group of deer was emerging from the forest, including Hope, now fully grown and healthy. But something was different. The deer weren't alone. Behind them came other wildlife, foxes, rabbits, and even a few wild turkeys. "Dad, look!" Emma called out, joining him at the fence. "They're seeking shelter from the storm." The animals moved with purpose, as if drawn to the sanctuary by some invisible force. Hope led them directly to the barn, showing no fear of human presence. Thunder's behavior now made perfect sense. He had somehow sensed these animals would come seeking refuge. Jack quickly made a decision, opening the empty paddock adjacent to the barn. "Let's give them a safe place to wait out the storm," he announced, his voice thick with emotion at witnessing this extraordinary display of trust from the wild creatures. The storm hit with tremendous force, but inside the barn, an incredible scene unfolded. Domestic and wild animals coexisted peacefully, sharing the space as if they understood their common need for shelter. Thunder maintained a calm presence, seemingly watching over all of them like a gentle guardian. Through the howling wind and driving rain, Jack observed something remarkable. The sanctuary's resident animals, particularly those nearly ready for release, were interacting with their wild counterparts. It was as if the rehabilitated animals were serving as bridges between the wild and domestic worlds. Emma, who had stayed to help manage the situation, watched in amazement as Hope approached the young mountain lion's enclosure without fear. "It's like they're teaching each other," she whispered. "The wild ones are showing our residents what freedom looks like, while our animals are showing them that humans can be trusted." The storm raged through the night, but within the barn, a profound lesson in trust and cooperation was taking place. Jack thought about how Thunder's initial act of compassion had set all of this in motion, creating a space where such unlikely connections could form. By morning, the storm had passed, leaving behind a landscape transformed by its power. As the sun broke through the clouds, the wild animals began to return to the forest. Hope lingered longest, touching noses with Thunder, before disappearing into the trees with her companions. The experience left a lasting impact on everyone at Whispering Meadows. They realized the sanctuary had become more than just a rehabilitation center. It was a bridge between worlds, a place where the boundaries between wild and domestic, human and animal, began to blur. Inspired by this event, Jack and Emma developed New programs focused on understanding wildlife behavior and promoting coexistence between humans and animals. They began documenting the unique interactions they witnessed, sharing their observations with researchers and other sanctuaries. Thunder's role evolved as well. His ability to sense and connect with both wild and domestic animals made him an invaluable part of the rehabilitation process. New arrivals to the sanctuary often calmed quickly in his presence, their natural fear of humans easing as they witnessed his gentle nature. The story of the storm and the wild animals seeking refuge spread quickly, adding another layer to the sanctuary's growing legend. People began to see Whispering Meadows as more than just a place of healing. It was becoming a symbol of hope, showing how trust and compassion could transform relationships between all living beings. Local artists started visiting the sanctuary, inspired by the unique atmosphere and the extraordinary bonds they witnessed. One painter created a series of works depicting thunder with various sanctuary residents, capturing the special connection between the horse and the animals he helped protect. The sanctuary's success attracted attention from wildlife experts and conservationists. They were particularly interested in studying how thunder's presence influenced the rehabilitation process and the unusual level of trust wild animals showed. Toward the facility, Jack found himself reflecting on how far they'd come from that first emotional night when he followed Thunder to the injured fawn. The tears he'd shed then had been just the beginning of a journey that continued to unfold in ways he never could have imagined. One afternoon, while watching Thunder interact with a newly arrived injured owl, Jack noticed something that stopped him in his tracks. The horse's methods of comfort and encouragement mirrored exactly how Sarah used to approach injured animals, with patience, gentleness, and unwavering attention. "You learned from her too, didn't you?" Jack murmured to Thunder, realizing that his horse had been paying attention all those years ago when Sarah would tend to injured creatures on the farm. Thunder's wisdom wasn't just instinct. It was also a legacy of Sarah's compassion, living on through his actions. This revelation added new depth to their mission. Jack began incorporating Sarah's old journals into the sanctuary's training materials, combining her insights with their current experiences to create a unique approach to wildlife rehabilitation. Emma found herself drawn more and more to the sanctuary's work, eventually reducing her hospital hours to spend more time at Whispering Meadows. Her medical background proved invaluable as they developed more sophisticated rehabilitation programs. The sanctuary's influence continued to grow, but it never lost the special quality that made it unique, the sense that this was a place where barriers dissolved and healing happened on multiple levels. Every success story, every recovered animal released back into the wild, carried with it the legacy of Thunder's original act of compassion. As winter approached, bringing with it new challenges and opportunities, Jack stood at the fence, watching Thunder move among the sanctuary's residents. The horse's quiet wisdom had not only changed countless lives, but had also shown them all that the capacity for kindness knew no bounds. That evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in brilliant shades of pink and gold, Jack noticed Thunder standing at attention, his ears pricked forward. Following his gaze, Jack spotted Hope at the forest's edge, now leading her own fawn through the autumn leaves. The sight brought fresh tears to his eyes, but these were tears of joy, of witnessing the endless cycle of compassion and healing that Thunder had set in motion. In that moment, Jack understood that their work was far from over. It was, in many ways, just beginning. Winter descended on Whispering Meadows with unexpected severity, bringing new challenges and opportunities for the sanctuary. One particularly cold morning, as frost crystallized on the barn windows, Jack discovered Thunder standing unusually still in his stall, ears forward, listening intently to something beyond human hearing. The horse's behavior triggered a memory of that first night when everything changed. Without hesitation, Jack grabbed his heavy coat and gestured to Thunder. "Show me, friend. What do you hear?" As if waiting for these words, Thunder led Jack out into the crisp morning air, their breath forming clouds in the frigid atmosphere. They trudged through the freshly fallen snow, following a path that led toward a steep ravine at the edge of the property. The sound reached Jack's ears before he saw its source, a faint, desperate cry carried on the winter wind. Rounding a bend, they discovered a wolf trapped at the bottom of the ravine, its leg caught between two fallen logs. What happened next demonstrated how far they'd come since the sanctuary's beginnings. Instead of panic or fear, Jack felt a calm certainty as he pulled out his phone to call Emma and Dr. Thompson. Thunder, meanwhile, carefully picked his way down the slope, approaching the injured wolf with the same gentle confidence he'd shown with Hope months ago. The wolf, rather than showing aggression, seemed to sense Thunder's peaceful intention. It stopped struggling, its intelligent eyes fixed on the horse who stood nearby, offering silent companionship while they waited for help to arrive. Jack witnessed this exchange with wonder, understanding that he was watching something extraordinary, a demonstration of trust between natural adversaries. When the rescue team arrived, they found an unexpected scene: a horse standing guard over an injured wolf, creating a bridge of trust that allowed the humans to approach and help. Dr. Thompson later remarked that without Thunder's presence, such a rescue would have been nearly impossible. The wolf's recovery at the sanctuary opened new doors of understanding. They named him Shadow, and his presence attracted attention from wildlife biologists who were amazed by his unusual comfort around humans and domestic animals. Thunder's influence seemed to extend beyond simple companionship. He was teaching wild animals to trust, showing them that help could come from unexpected sources. As winter deepened, the sanctuary became a haven for more than just injured wildlife. Local farmers began bringing their animals to weather the harsh conditions, creating an unprecedented mixture of domestic and wild creatures under one roof. The atmosphere inside the barn was extraordinary. Horses sharing space with recovering deer, farm cats curled up near healing foxes, all coexisting in peaceful harmony. One snowy evening, a local filmmaker visited the sanctuary to document this unique environment. Her cameras captured something remarkable: Thunder moving from stall to stall, checking on each animal like a caring nurse making rounds. The footage went viral, touching hearts around the world and bringing unexpected attention to Whispering Meadows. The sanctuary's fame brought both opportunities and challenges. Offers of support poured in, along with requests to establish similar programs elsewhere. Jack and Emma found themselves sharing their methodology with other facilities, explaining how Thunder's example had shaped their approach to wildlife rehabilitation. But it was a visit from a renowned animal behaviorist that truly validated their work. Dr. Elena Martinez spent a week observing Thunder's interactions with various animals, documenting his methods of communication and comfort. Her findings suggested that Thunder possessed an extraordinary emotional intelligence that transcended species barriers. "What you have here," Dr. Martinez explained, reviewing her notes with Jack and Emma, "is more than just a sanctuary. It's a living laboratory of interspecies communication." Thunder isn't just helping these animals heal physically, he's teaching them and us about the fundamental connections between all living beings. The sanctuary's success inspired Jack to expand their mission. With Emma's support, they began developing educational programs that brought students from local schools to learn about wildlife conservation and animal behavior. The children's reactions to Thunder and his unlikely family of wild and domestic animals proved that compassion could be taught through example. One particularly moving moment came when a group of children from a special needs program visited the sanctuary. A young girl who had never spoken due to severe autism suddenly began talking to Thunder, sharing her thoughts with the gentle horse who listened with infinite patience. Her teachers were moved to tears, witnessing a breakthrough that traditional therapy hadn't achieved. The sanctuary's influence continued to grow in unexpected ways. Local artists began offering art therapy sessions using the peaceful atmosphere and animal interactions to help people dealing with trauma and emotional challenges. Musicians discovered that their melodies had a calming effect on both the animals and human visitors, leading to regular concerts in the barn. Thunder's wisdom seemed to deepen with each passing day. He developed an uncanny ability to identify which animals needed special attention, often alerting the staff to health issues before they became apparent. His gentle presence became an essential part of the rehabilitation process, particularly for animals who had suffered trauma or abuse. As winter began to loosen its grip on Whispering Meadows, Jack noticed Shadow, now fully recovered, showing signs of restlessness. The wolf would stand at the edge of his enclosure, gazing toward the forest with increasing frequency. Thunder, too, seemed to sense that it was time for Shadow to return to the wild. The day of Shadow's release was marked by an extraordinary occurrence. As they opened the enclosure door, Thunder stepped forward, accompanying the wolf to the forest's edge. The two animals paused there, sharing a moment of silent communication before Shadow loped away into the trees. But instead of disappearing entirely, the wolf stopped at the forest line, raised his head, and let out a long, melodious howl. That evening, as the sun set behind snow-capped mountains, Jack heard answering howls from the forest. Shadow had found his pack, but something told Jack this wouldn't be the last they'd see of him. The sanctuary had become a place where the boundaries between wild and domestic, human and animal, had dissolved into something more meaningful, a community of souls helping and healing each other. The story of Thunder and Whispering Meadows continued to evolve, touching lives in ways that Jack and Emma never could have predicted. Each day brought new challenges and opportunities for healing, learning, and growth. The sanctuary had become more than just a place of rehabilitation. It was a beacon of hope, showing the world that compassion and understanding could bridge any divide. As spring began to whisper its arrival in the warming air and melting snow, Jack found himself reflecting on the journey that had begun with those tears of discovery months ago. Thunder's simple act of kindness toward an injured fawn had sparked a movement of compassion that continued to ripple outward, changing lives and healing hearts along the way. The sanctuary's legacy would live on through the countless animals who found healing within its walls, the people who discovered hope in its peaceful atmosphere, and the enduring example of a horse who showed the world that love knows no boundaries. Thunder's wisdom had transformed Whispering Meadows into more than just a sanctuary. It had become a living testament to the power of compassion to change the world, one heart at a time. Spring brought an unexpected development to Whispering Meadows that would test everything they had built. One morning, Jack discovered an unsigned letter in his mailbox. A developer was interested in purchasing the surrounding forest land to build a luxury resort. The property wasn't Jack's to protect, and the prospect of construction threatened the delicate ecosystem they'd helped nurture. Thunder seemed to sense Jack's distress that morning, pressing his velvet nose against his friend's shoulder as Jack reread the letter for the 10th time. The horse's wise eyes held a steady gaze, as if reminding Jack of all the miracles they'd witnessed together. Looking up at the tree line where they'd first found hope, where shadow still occasionally appeared in the twilight, Jack knew they couldn't let this sanctuary's work be undermined. "We'll find a way, old friend," Jack murmured, reaching for his phone to call Emma. His daughter arrived within the hour, her medical bag still slung over her shoulder from her hospital rounds. As they discussed options, a remarkable thing began to happen. Animals started emerging from the forest, gathering at the sanctuary's edges as if sensing the threat to their home. Hope appeared with her fawn, now strong and healthy. Shadows. Pack lingered at the forest's edge, their presence a reminder of the delicate balance between wild and civilized spaces. Even the rescued hawks circled overhead, their cries echoing across the valley as if sounding an alarm. "It's like they know," Emma whispered, watching the gathering of wildlife. "They're showing us what we'd be losing." Thunder stood at attention, his posture proud as he surveyed the assembled creatures, living proof of the sanctuary's importance. The next few weeks became a whirlwind of activity. Emma reached out to her contacts in the medical community, many of whom had referred patients to the sanctuary's healing programs. Jack contacted local conservation groups and wildlife experts who had studied Thunder's unique abilities. Dr. Thompson compiled data on the successful rehabilitations they'd accomplished. The community's response was overwhelming. People began sharing stories of how Whispering Meadows had touched their lives. The young girl, who had spoken her first words to Thunder, wrote a letter with her parents' help. The troubled youth, who had found purpose helping injured animals, created artwork depicting the sanctuary's impact. Local media picked up the story, but it was a chance encounter that truly changed everything. A wildlife photographer who had been documenting Shadow's pack captured an extraordinary series of images: wild animals peacefully approaching the sanctuary, Thunder standing guard as they received care, and the unique interactions between species that had become commonplace at Whispering Meadows. These photos, published in a prestigious nature magazine, caught the attention of international conservation organizations. Experts began recognizing what Jack had known all along, that Thunder's approach to healing transcended traditional boundaries between wild and domestic animals, creating a model that could revolutionize wildlife rehabilitation. As pressure mounted, the developers agreed to a public meeting to discuss their plans. The town hall was packed with supporters of the sanctuary, but it was the evidence they presented that proved most compelling. Scientists shared research showing the unique success rates of their rehabilitation programs. Medical professionals testified about the therapeutic benefits for human patients. But the most powerful moment came when Jack simply played a video montage of Thunder's interactions with injured wildlife. The footage showed the horse gentle, guiding frightened animals to trust again, standing vigil over the sick and injured, teaching young animals to regain their strength. In those simple acts of compassion, the true value of Whispering Meadows became clear to everyone present. The developers, moved by the presentation and facing mounting public pressure, eventually withdrew their plans. But the community wasn't satisfied with just maintaining the status quo. A movement began to legally protect the land surrounding the sanctuary, ensuring it would remain a wildlife corridor for generations to come. Local businesses and conservation groups came together to create a trust that would purchase and preserve the forest land. Schools began incorporating the sanctuary's work into their science and environmental education programs. What had started as a threat became an opportunity to strengthen the sanctuary's mission and expand its influence. Thunder's role in this victory didn't go unnoticed. His intuitive understanding of both wild and domestic animals had created a unique model of rehabilitation that challenged traditional approaches. Research institutions began requesting to study his methods, leading to new insights into animal behavior and interspecies communication. One warm evening, as Jack and Emma sat on the porch, watching Thunder lead a newly recovered deer back to the forest's edge, they discussed how far they'd come from that first emotional night of discovery. The sanctuary had evolved into something far beyond their initial vision. It had become a living laboratory of compassion, a place where barriers between species dissolved in the face of mutual understanding and care. "You know, Dad," Emma said softly, "I think this is exactly what Mom meant when she used to talk about the healing power of animals. She saw something special in Thunder from the beginning." Jack nodded, remembering Sarah's quiet insistence that animals had wisdom to teach us if we only paid attention. Thunder returned from his escort duty, pausing to check on a young raccoon learning to climb again after an injury. His gentle encouragement of the smaller animal demonstrated the perfect balance of support and independence that had become the sanctuary's hallmark. The sanctuary's influence continued to grow in unexpected ways. Other facilities began adopting their methods, creating a network of rehabilitation centers that shared Thunder's approach to healing. The horse's legacy would live on through countless animals and humans whose lives were touched by his example. As summer approached, bringing new life to the preserved forest around them, Jack reflected on the journey that had brought them here. What had begun in tears of discovery had blossomed into a movement of compassion that continued to ripple outward, touching lives and healing hearts in ways he never could have imagined. Thunder stood at the fence, his wise eyes scanning the horizon as the sun set behind the mountains. In the distance, wolf howls echoed through the valley, shadows pack, still maintaining their connection to the sanctuary that had helped one of their own. The horse's ears pricked forward, acknowledging the call of his wild friends. The scene captured everything Whispering Meadows had become, a place where the boundaries between wild and domestic, human and animal dissolved into something greater. A place where compassion knew no limits and healing touched every heart that crossed its threshold. As darkness settled over the sanctuary, the soft sounds of contented animals filled the air. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities for healing and growth. But for now, in this peaceful moment, Jack knew with certainty that they had created something truly extraordinary, a legacy of love that would continue to change lives for generations to come. Thunder's gentle nickering drew Jack's attention back to the present. The horse was watching a new group of injured wildlife being brought in for care, his posture already shifting into the careful, nurturing stance that had become his trademark. Even after all this time, his capacity for compassion seemed limitless, his wisdom continuing to guide and inspire everyone around him. The arrival of summer brought an unexpected visitor to Whispering Meadows that would once again transform their understanding of animal consciousness and healing. Dr. James Chen, a renowned animal behaviorist specializing in equine intelligence, had traveled from across the country after hearing about Thunder's extraordinary abilities. "I've studied horses for 30 years, Dr. Chen explained to Jack and Emma as they walked the sanctuary grounds, "but I've never encountered anything quite like what you've described. The level of cognitive empathy, the cross-species understanding, it's unprecedented." Thunder watched them from his paddock, his intelligent eyes following their movement with characteristic awareness. As Dr. Chen began his observations, a new injured animal arrived at the sanctuary, a young black bear badly wounded from what appeared to be a confrontation with another predator. The bear's injuries were severe, and more concerning was its complete withdrawal from any attempt at help. It refused food and medicine, curling into itself with a devastation that went beyond physical pain. Thunder's response to the bear's arrival was immediate and unexpected. Instead of his usual gentle approach, he began performing a series of movements in front of the bear's enclosure, almost like a dance. Dr. Chen watched in amazement, frantically taking notes as the horse moved, with deliberate grace, creating patterns that seemed to have meaning beyond human understanding. "This is extraordinary," Dr. Chen whispered, not wanting to interrupt the interaction. "He's developing a completely new form of communication, adapting his methods to reach an animal that's shut down from trauma. I've never seen anything like it." Over the next few days, the bear began to respond to Thunder's presence, first with subtle shifts in position, then with direct eye contact, and finally by moving closer to the edge of its enclosure when the horse was near. Dr. Thompson's medical reports showed improved vital signs, even though the bear had yet to accept traditional treatment. "Thunder's creating a bridge," Dr. Chen explained during an evening discussion with the sanctuary team. "He's not just offering comfort. He's teaching the bear how to trust again, how to reconnect with life. This goes beyond instinct or learned behavior. This is a form of emotional intelligence we barely understand." The breakthrough came during a stormy night when a massive thunderclap spooked several of the sanctuary's residents. The bear, already traumatized, began showing signs of extreme distress. Before anyone could react, Thunder broke from his usual routine, positioning himself directly in front of the bear's enclosure, standing firm against the storm. What happened next left even Dr. Chen speechless. The bear, responding to Thunder's steady presence, began mimicking the horse's calm breathing pattern. As the storm raged around them, predator and prey found a connection that transcended their natural instincts, creating a moment of profound healing. This incident became the cornerstone of Dr. Chen's research, leading to new understandings about animal consciousness and the potential for cross-species emotional support. But for Jack, it was yet another reminder of Thunder's extraordinary capacity to touch lives in unexpected ways. The bear's recovery accelerated after that night, aided by its newfound trust in the sanctuary's care team. Thunder's methods had opened a door that traditional rehabilitation techniques couldn't reach, showing once again that healing often came through unexpected channels. As word of this latest miracle spread, Whispering Meadows began receiving requests from wildlife rehabilitation centers worldwide, seeking to understand and implement Thunder's approaches. Jack and Emma found themselves hosting workshops, sharing their experiences, while Thunder demonstrated his gentle wisdom with new animals. One particularly moving session involved a group of indigenous wildlife experts who had traveled from various parts of the world to witness Thunder's work. Their traditional knowledge of animal behavior added new dimensions to understanding the horse's methods, blending ancient wisdom with modern rehabilitation techniques. In our traditions, an elder from a Canadian First Nations tribe explained, "We speak of animal spirits who guide and teach us. Your Thunder, he carries such a spirit. He bridges worlds not just between species, but between the physical and spiritual realms of healing." This perspective opened new avenues for the sanctuary's work. They began incorporating traditional healing practices alongside modern veterinary care, creating a holistic approach that honored both science and ancient wisdom. Thunder seemed to thrive in this expanded framework, his methods evolving to encompass these deeper understandings. The bear's eventual release became a celebration of everything the sanctuary stood for. On a clear autumn morning, they opened the enclosure doors, allowing the now healthy animal to choose its own time to return to the wild. Thunder stood nearby, his presence as steady as it had been through the entire rehabilitation process. The bear paused at the forest's edge, turning back to meet Thunder's gaze one final time. In that moment, everyone present felt the power of the connection these two unlikely friends had forged. It was a reminder that healing came in many forms, and that the boundaries we created between species were perhaps more fluid than we imagined. Dr. Chen's research paper about Thunder's methods, published in a prestigious scientific journal, brought new attention to the sanctuary's work. But more importantly, it validated what Jack had known since that first emotional night following Thunder to the creek, that animals possess depths of wisdom and compassion that humans were only beginning to understand. The sanctuary continued to evolve, incorporating new insights while staying true to its core mission of healing and connection. Thunder's example inspired a new generation of animal caregivers, showing them that sometimes the most powerful medicine came through simple presence and unconditional acceptance. As summer faded into autumn, Jack often found himself watching Thunder with the same sense of wonder he'd felt on that first night of discovery. The horse's capacity for compassion seemed limitless, his wisdom continuing to touch lives in ways that defied explanation. One evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink, Jack noticed Thunder standing at attention, his ears pricked forward. Following his gaze, Jack spotted the bear at the forest's edge, now accompanied by two cubs. The animal had returned not as a patient, but as a visitor, sharing its new family with the friend who had helped it heal. The sight brought fresh tears to Jack's eyes, but these were tears of joy, of witnessing the endless cycle of compassion and healing that Thunder had set in motion. In that moment, he understood that their work was far from over. It was, in many ways, just beginning. Thunder's legacy would live on through the countless lives he touched, both animal and human, creating a ripple effect of healing that continued to spread far beyond the boundaries of Whispering Meadows. His simple acts of kindness had grown into a movement, showing the world that love and compassion knew no species, no boundaries, no limits. As darkness settled over the sanctuary, The soft sounds of contented animals filled the air. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities for healing and growth. But for now, in this peaceful moment, Jack knew with certainty that they had created something truly extraordinary, a testament to the power of unconditional love to transform lives and heal hearts, one gentle connection at a time. The changing of seasons brought an unexpected challenge to Whispering Meadows when Thunder himself fell ill. One crisp autumn morning, Jack found his faithful friend lying in his stall, unusually lethargic and showing signs of distress. The sight of the normally vigorous horse in such a state sent a wave of fear through the entire sanctuary. Dr. Thompson arrived within the hour, her face grave as she examined Thunder. "It's colic," she explained to Jack and Emma, who stood anxiously nearby. "A severe case. We need to act quickly." The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The great healer now needed healing himself. Word of Thunder's condition spread rapidly through the sanctuary's network of friends and supporters. What happened next demonstrated the profound impact the horse had made on so many lives. The animals at the sanctuary seemed to sense something was wrong. The rehabilitating wildlife grew quieter, more subdued. Even Shadow's pack appeared at the forest's edge, their mournful howls echoing across the valley. But the most remarkable response came from Hope, the first animal Thunder had helped save. Now, a mature doe, she emerged from the forest with her fawn and approached the barn, something wild deer rarely did in daylight. She stood at Thunder's stall window, reaching in to touch her nose to his, in a gesture that brought tears to everyone's eyes. As Thunder fought his illness, the sanctuary's residents began exhibiting extraordinary behavior. The recovered bear that Thunder had helped heal appeared at the edge of the property, standing sentinel as if standing guard. The hawks he had rehabilitated circled continuously overhead, their keen eyes fixed on the barn where their friend lay sick. Even more touching was the response from the human community. Children who had found their voice through Thunder's gentle presence sent hand-drawn get-well cards. Former patients from the sanctuary's therapy programs arrived to sit with him, reading stories or simply offering quiet companionship. The same gentle presence Thunder had offered to so many was now being returned to him. Local animal communicators and energy healers offered their services, working alongside traditional veterinary care in a beautiful blend of approaches that reflected the sanctuary's holistic philosophy. Dr. Chen returned from his research station across the country, bringing Eastern medical techniques that complemented Dr. Thompson's treatments. Emma noticed something profound during this time. "Look at how everyone's coming together," she said to Jack one evening, watching as another group of well-wishers departed. "Thunder's still teaching us even now. He's showing us how community forms around healing, how love creates connections we never imagined possible." The nights were the hardest, as Thunder's condition fluctuated. Jack refused to leave his friend's side, sleeping on a cot in the barn. During these quiet hours, he would talk to Thunder, reminiscing about their journey together, about all the lives they'd touched, about Sarah and how proud she would be of what they'd accomplished. One particularly difficult night, when Thunder's breathing became labored and fear gripped everyone's hearts, something extraordinary happened. The sanctuary's residents, both wild and domestic, began making their way to the barn. They gathered outside Thunder's stall, each in their own way, offering comfort to the one who had helped them heal. Dr. Thompson watched in amazement as the animals maintained a quiet vigil. "In all my years of veterinary medicine," she whispered, "I've never seen anything like this. It's as if they're returning the energy he gave them, creating a circle of healing." Slowly, gradually, Thunder began to improve. His recovery became a celebration of everything the sanctuary stood for: the power of community, the strength of compassion, the deep connections that formed when hearts opened to one another. Each small sign of progress was cheered by both human and animal residents. As Thunder regained his strength, Jack noticed something had shifted at the sanctuary. The experience had deepened their understanding of healing, showing them that even the strongest sometimes needed support, that vulnerability could be a form of strength, that community was essential to recovery. The first day, Thunder was strong, enough to walk to the paddock. He was accompanied by an honor guard of sorts. The deer, led by Hope, watched from the forest's edge. Shadow's pack maintained a respectful distance. The hawks soared overhead. It was as if all of nature was celebrating the recovery of one who had given so much to others. But Thunder's illness had taught them all an important lesson about mortality and the preciousness of time. Jack and Emma began documenting Thunder's methods more thoroughly, creating training programs to ensure his legacy of compassionate healing would continue. They worked with Dr. Chen to develop protocols that combined Thunder's intuitive approach with scientific understanding. The sanctuary expanded its programs to include training for other therapy animals, using Thunder's example to show how gentle presence and unconditional acceptance could facilitate healing across species. Young horses showed particular aptitude for this work, as if inspired by Thunder's example. As Thunder returned to his role as the sanctuary's heart and soul, his brush with illness seemed to have deepened his wisdom. His interactions with injured animals became even more nuanced, more patient. It was as if his own experience of vulnerability had enhanced his ability to understand and comfort others. One morning, as Jack watched Thunder greeting a new arrival, a young fox with an injured paw, he noticed something remarkable. The horse was teaching one of the younger therapy horses how to approach injured wildlife, demonstrating the gentle movements and careful patience that had become his trademark. "He's passing it on," Emma observed, standing beside her father. "He knows it's not just about healing individuals, it's about creating a legacy of compassion that will continue long after he's gone." Jack nodded, understanding that this, too, was part of Thunder's wisdom. The sanctuary had always been about more than just rehabilitating injured wildlife. It was about building bridges between species, about showing that healing came through connection, about demonstrating that love knew no boundaries. Thunder's illness and recovery had reinforced these truths in powerful ways. As autumn deepened into winter, Thunder continued to touch lives with his gentle wisdom. But now there was an added dimension to his work. He was actively teaching others, both animal and human, how to carry forward his legacy of compassionate healing. The story of Thunder's illness and recovery became part of the sanctuary's narrative, a testament to the power of community and the circular nature of healing. Those who came to Whispering Meadows seeking help found not just a place of healing, but a living example of how love and support could transform lives. Jack often found himself watching Thunder with a deeper appreciation, understanding that every moment was precious, every interaction an opportunity to share the wisdom that had changed so many lives. The horse's legacy would live on through the countless beings he had touched, creating an endless ripple of compassion and healing. Winter's grip on Whispering Meadows began to loosen, bringing with it an extraordinary development that would cement Thunder's legacy in unexpected ways. One morning, as the first hints of spring softened the frozen landscape, Jack noticed Thunder exhibiting a familiar behavior. The intense focus and gentle nickering that usually signaled something significant was about to happen. This time, however, the horse's attention was directed not toward the forest or any of the sanctuary's current residents, but toward the old trail that led to the neighboring property. Following Thunder's gaze, Jack spotted an unusual sight. A young girl, no more than 12, leading a clearly exhausted horse through the snow. The approaching horse was thin, its coat dull and patchy, showing signs of neglect. But what struck Jack most was the look in its eyes, a mixture of fear and resignation that spoke of deeper wounds than mere physical neglect. The girl's face showed determination, despite tears frozen on her cheeks. "Please," she said as soon as she was within earshot, her voice trembling, "I heard about what you do here. This is Starlight. He was my grandfather's horse, but after Grandpa passed away." She trailed off, fighting back tears. "The new owners, they don't care about him. They won't let me help him. So I took him." Jack's heart tightened at the sight of both child and horse in such distress. Before he could respond, Thunder let out a soft whinny that seemed to catch Starlight's attention. The neglected horse lifted his head slightly, meeting Thunder's steady gaze. What followed was a demonstration of Thunder's wisdom that surpassed anything they'd seen before. He began a series of gentle movements, almost like a dance, similar to what he'd done with the injured bear, but somehow different, more nuanced, more specific to Starlight's needs. Emma, who had emerged from the house upon hearing voices, watched in amazement. "Dad," she whispered, "he's not just trying to comfort Starlight. Look, he's showing him something." Indeed, Thunder's movements seemed to be inviting imitation, as if he were teaching the other horse how to reclaim his own strength and dignity. The girl, who introduced herself as Maya, explained more of Starlight's story as they led both horses to the barn. Her grandfather had been a skilled horseman who had raised Starlight from a colt, creating a deep bond through patience and gentle training. After his passing, the property had been sold to developers who saw the horse as merely an inconvenience. "Grandpa always said horses can feel what's in your heart," Maya said, watching as Thunder continued his gentle interaction with Starlight. "He said they know things we don't, that they can heal parts of us we didn't even know were broken." Over the next few hours, as Dr. Thompson examined Starlight and they worked to contact Maya's parents, Jack observed something remarkable. Thunder was demonstrating a new dimension of his healing abilities. He wasn't just offering comfort or encouraging recovery. He was actively teaching another horse how to rediscover its own inner strength. Maya's parents arrived, worried but understanding of their daughter's actions. They had been trying to find a way to help Starlight, but felt powerless against the new property owners. The solution, when it presented itself, seemed obvious to everyone. Starlight would stay at Whispering Meadows, where Maya could visit and help with his rehabilitation. What unfolded over the following weeks became a testament to the transformative power of compassion. Under Thunder's guidance, Starlight began to change. His physical recovery was remarkable, but even more striking was the return of light to His eyes, the gradual restoration of his spirit. Maya visited every day after school, watching in wonder as Thunder worked with Starlight. The older horse seemed to be teaching the younger one not just how to trust again, but how to become a healer in his own right. Together, they began working with other injured animals at the sanctuary, Starlight gradually gaining confidence in his ability to offer comfort and support. The sanctuary's regular visitors noticed something profound happening. Thunder was no longer just healing. He was creating a legacy, teaching another horse to carry forward his mission of compassion. It was as if he understood the importance of ensuring his work would continue through others. Dr. Chen, who returned to document this development, noted that Thunder's methods with Starlight showed an unprecedented level of sophistication. He's not just demonstrating behaviors, the scientist explained. He's actually teaching therapeutic techniques. The implications for our understanding of animal consciousness are staggering. Maya's presence added another dimension to the sanctuary's work. Her natural empathy and the wisdom she'd learned from her grandfather complemented Thunder's methods perfectly. She began helping with the sanctuary's youth programs, sharing her own story and showing other children how to connect with animals in need. The transformation of both Starlight and Maya became a powerful example of the sanctuary's mission. Together, they showed how healing often worked in both directions, the helper becoming helped, the teacher becoming student. Thunder watched over their progress with what could only be described as pride. One particularly moving moment came when a new injured deer arrived at the sanctuary. To everyone's surprise, it was Starlight who first approached the frightened animal, mimicking the gentle, patient movements he had learned from Thunder. The deer responded just as positively to Starlight's ministrations as others had to Thunder's. "Look at that," Emma said softly to Jack as they watched. "Thunder's creating a whole new generation of healers. He's making sure his work will continue long after he's gone." The thought brought tears to Jack's eyes, but they were tears of joy and gratitude for the endless ways Thunder continued to amaze them. The story of Starlight's transformation spread through the community, bringing new attention to the sanctuary's work. Other horse owners began bringing their troubled animals, hoping to benefit from what they called Thunder's School of Healing. The sanctuary expanded its programs to include training for therapy horses, with Thunder and Starlight as the primary teachers. Maya's role grew as well. Her natural ability to understand and explain the horse's methods made her an invaluable part of the sanctuary's educational programs. She began leading tours for school groups, sharing her story and helping other children understand the deep connection possible between humans and animals. As spring fully arrived, bringing new life to Whispering Meadows, Jack often found himself watching Thunder and Starlight working together with the sanctuary's residents. The older horse's wisdom seemed to flow naturally into his protégé, creating a continuation of the healing legacy that had begun with that first emotional night by the creek. The sanctuary had become more than just a place of rehabilitation. It was now a school of compassion, where animals and humans alike learned the profound art of healing through connection. Thunder's example continued to inspire and guide, showing that the capacity for love and understanding knew no bounds. Maya's grandfather's words about horses knowing what's in our hearts proved prophetic. Through Thunder's guidance and Starlight's transformation, they had witnessed the truth of this wisdom, seeing how pure compassion could bridge any gap and heal any wound. As the days lengthened and the sanctuary continued to evolve, Jack understood that they were witnessing something truly extraordinary. The creation of a living legacy that would continue to touch lives and heal hearts for generations to come. Thunder had not only shown them the power of compassion, but had ensured that his work would continue through those he had taught and inspired. Late spring brought an unprecedented event to Whispering Meadows that would showcase the full extent of Thunder's influence. A massive forest fire in a neighboring state had displaced hundreds of wild animals, and emergency wildlife services were desperately seeking sanctuaries to house the injured and traumatized creatures. Jack received the call on a warm morning, as he watched Thunder and Starlight working with a recently rescued fox. "We know it's a lot to ask," the wildlife coordinator said, her voice tight with stress, "but your sanctuary's reputation for handling difficult cases. We've got animals here that won't respond to traditional rehabilitation methods." Without hesitation, Jack looked at Thunder, who had already turned his attention toward his human friend, ears pricked forward as if understanding the gravity of the conversation. "Send them," Jack replied. "We'll find a way." The first transport arrived the following day, trucks carrying cages of injured wildlife, from small mammals to larger predators, all bearing the physical and emotional scars of their ordeal. The sanctuary's staff worked tirelessly to create space, converting paddocks and empty stalls into temporary housing. What happened next demonstrated the true miracle of what Thunder had created at Whispering Meadows. As each animal was carefully unloaded, Thunder and Starlight began what could only be described as a coordinated healing effort. The two horses moved from enclosure to enclosure, their movements synchronized in a dance of compassion that seemed to speak directly to the traumatized animals' hearts. Dr. Chen, who had returned to document this unprecedented situation, watched in amazement as the horses worked. "They're not just offering comfort," he observed, frantically taking notes. "They're actually creating a therapeutic environment. Look at how they're adapting their approach for each species." The most remarkable case involved a young mountain lion, badly burned and nearly catatonic with trauma. Traditional treatment methods had failed, and the wildlife veterinarians had almost given up hope. Thunder approached the big cat's enclosure with extraordinary care, but instead of his usual gentle movements, he did something unexpected. He called to Shadow's pack. The wolves, who had maintained their connection to the sanctuary, emerged from the forest at Thunder's summons. Jajasibisa, his guidance, they began a series of movements and vocalizations that seemed to speak directly to the mountain lion's wild nature. Gradually, the big cat began to respond, showing the first signs of engagement since its rescue. Maya, who had become an integral part of the sanctuary's work, observed the interaction with keen insight. "They're reminding it of who it is," she explained to a group of amazed wildlife workers. "Thunder knows that sometimes healing means reconnecting with your true nature." The sanctuary's regular residents played their own roles in this massive rehabilitation effort. Hope and her family group emerged from the forest daily, demonstrating to the injured deer that recovery was possible. The rehabilitated hawks soared overhead, their free flight offering inspiration to their grounded kin. As days turned into weeks, the sanctuary's success rate with the fire survivors began drawing attention from wildlife rehabilitation experts worldwide. The combination of Thunder's intuitive methods, Starlight's eager assistance, and the sanctuary's holistic approach was achieving results that defied conventional wisdom. Emma, working alongside Dr. Thompson, began documenting these revolutionary techniques. "What we're seeing here," she explained to a visiting group of veterinarians, "is the creation of a completely new approach to wildlife rehabilitation. It's not just about physical healing, it's about restoring the spirit." The most touching moments came during the quiet evening hours, when Jack would find Thunder and Starlight making their rounds together. The older horse seemed to be passing on his final lessons to his protégé, ensuring that his methods would live on through his student. One particularly memorable evening, as the setting sun painted the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, Thunder led Starlight to the creek where everything had begun with hope. There, in the peaceful gathering dusk, the two horses stood together, watching as several of their recovered patients returned to the wild. The mountain lion was among the last to be released. Its transformation had been nothing short of miraculous, from a traumatized, barely responsive creature to a confident predator ready to reclaim its place in the wild. Before disappearing into the forest, it paused, turning to meet Thunder's, a gaze in a moment of profound connection. As news of the sanctuary's success spread, something remarkable began to happen. Other sanctuaries started sending their most difficult cases to Whispering Meadows, not just for rehabilitation, but for their staff to learn Thunder's methods. The horse's legacy was expanding far beyond the boundaries of the farm. Dr. Chen's research papers about the sanctuary's work during this period would later revolutionize the field of wildlife rehabilitation. "What we witnessed," he wrote, "was not just interspecies cooperation, but the emergence of a new understanding of healing itself, one that recognizes the deep connections between all living beings." Maya's role continued to grow as she helped translate Thunder's methods for others. Her childhood wisdom, combined with her grandfather's teachings and Thunder's example, created a bridge between the scientific and intuitive aspects of the sanctuary's work. Jack often found himself watching Thunder with a sense of awe, understanding that they were witnessing something truly extraordinary. The horse had not only created a method of healing that transcended species barriers, he had built a community of healing that would continue his work far into the future. As the last of the fire survivors prepared for release, the sanctuary held a small celebration. Staff, volunteers, and regular visitors gathered to honor the incredible work that had been accomplished. Thunder and Starlight stood together at the center of it all, their presence a reminder of how far they'd come from that first emotional night of discovery. The event became a turning point for Whispering Meadows. What had begun as one horse's act of compassion had grown into a movement, touching lives and healing hearts in ways no one could have predicted. Thunder's methods were being adopted by sanctuaries around the world, creating a network of healing that knew no boundaries. Late that night, as Jack sat on his porch watching Thunder and Starlight make one final round of their charges, he reflected on the journey that had brought them here. The tears he'd shed that first night had been just the beginning of something far greater than he could have imagined. The sanctuary had become more than just a place of healing. It was a beacon of hope, showing the world that compassion and understanding could bridge any divide. Thunder's legacy would live on through Starlight, through Maya, through every life touched by his extraordinary gift for healing. As the stars emerged in the clear night sky, their light reflecting in Thunder's wise eyes, Jack understood that they had been part of something truly miraculous. The horse's simple act of kindness had sparked a revolution in healing, showing that love and compassion were the most powerful medicines of all. As summer reached its peak, Whispering Meadows faced its most challenging case yet. A blind horse, named Spirit, rescued from an abandoned farm. The mare's physical wounds had healed, but she remained deeply traumatized, refusing to move from her stall or interact with anyone. Her arrival would test Thunder's methods in ways no one could have anticipated. Thunder's approach to Spirit was unlike anything they'd seen before. Instead of his usual gentle movements, he began creating patterns of sound, soft nickering, rhythmic hoofbeats, and careful breathing that seemed to create a language of comfort that transcended sight. Starlight, learning from his mentor, joined in this sonic healing, their combined efforts creating a symphony of hope. Maya, who had developed an uncanny ability to interpret Thunder's methods, noticed something profound. "They're not just trying to comfort her," she explained to Jack one morning, watching the horses work. "They're teaching her a new way to see the world, using sound and air currents to map her surroundings." Dr. Thompson confirmed Maya's observation through medical monitoring. "Spirit's brain activity changes dramatically when Thunder and Starlight are working with her," she reported. "It's as if they're helping her develop new neural pathways, teaching her brain to process sensory information in different ways." The breakthrough came during a summer thunderstorm. As lightning illuminated the sky and thunder rolled across the valley, Spirit began to panic in her stall. Thunder and Starlight immediately positioned themselves on either side of her enclosure, their steady presence and rhythmic movements creating a bubble of calm in the midst of chaos. Gradually, Spirit began to mirror their breathing patterns, her panic subsiding as she tuned into their peaceful energy. It was the first time she had responded directly to their guidance, a moment that brought tears to everyone's eyes. But Thunder wasn't finished. He began leading Spirit in a slow, careful dance of movement, teaching her how to navigate her dark world with confidence. The sanctuary's other residents joined in this remarkable rehabilitation effort. The wolves would howl softly at specific times, helping Spirit learn to use sound to orient herself. The bird's wing beats created air patterns she could feel and follow. Even the deer contributed, their gentle movements in the nearby grass helping her map the world through sound and sensation. Dr. Chen, who had returned to document this extraordinary case, was amazed by the sophisticated level of cooperation among the animals. "What we're witnessing," he said, watching Spirit take her first confident steps without guidance, "is the evolution of Thunder's methods into something even more profound, a complete reimagining of how healing can work." News of Spirit's progress attracted attention from specialists in equine therapy and neurological rehabilitation. They came to observe Thunder's techniques, amazed by how his methods were helping Spirit develop new ways of experiencing and navigating the world. Emma, working with these experts, began developing programs specifically for animals with sensory challenges. "Thunder's showing us that disability doesn't have to mean limitation," she explained to a group of veterinary students. "It's about finding new ways to connect, new paths to understanding." Maya spent hours documenting the subtle ways Thunder and Starlight communicated with Spirit, creating a detailed record of their methods. Her insights, combining her grandfather's wisdom with Thunder's example, would later become the foundation for a revolutionary approach to rehabilitating traumatized animals. The most beautiful moment came one moonlit night, when Spirit finally ventured out of her stall into the meadow. Thunder and Starlight flanked her, their movements synchronized, with hers creating a dance of three horses that brought tears to everyone watching. Spirit, once lost in darkness, was learning to dance with the light she could feel but not see. Jack, observing from the porch, realized they were witnessing something beyond mere rehabilitation. Thunder had created a new understanding of healing itself, one that recognized that sometimes the path to recovery meant learning to experience the world in entirely new ways. The sanctuary's success with Spirit led to a new chapter in its evolution. They began receiving requests to help other animals with sensory challenges, each case adding to their understanding of how Thunder's methods could be adapted and expanded. Local artists, inspired by Spirit's story, created a series of sculptures designed to be experienced through touch rather than sight. These pieces became part of a sensory garden where visitors could begin to understand how Spirit experienced her world. Thunder's work with Spirit demonstrated the limitless possibilities of compassion and understanding. He showed that healing wasn't just about fixing what was broken. It was about discovering new ways to experience joy, connection, and purpose. The sanctuary's reputation grew, drawing attention from around the world. People came not just to witness Thunder's methods, but to learn from the profound wisdom embedded in his approach to healing. His work with Spirit became a symbol of hope for anyone facing seemingly insurmountable challenges. Maya, working with Emma, began developing programs that combined Thunder's methods with traditional therapy techniques. Their approach, which they called sensory bridge healing, showed remarkable success with both animals and humans facing similar challenges. As summer began to fade into autumn, Spirit had become not just a success story, but a teacher in her own right. Her journey showed others that limitation could become transformation, that darkness could lead to a different kind of light. One evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, Jack watched Thunder, Starlight, and Spirit moving together in the meadow. Their synchronized movements told a story of healing that transcended words, a story of how love and understanding could bridge any gap, illuminate any darkness. Thunder's legacy had grown beyond anything they could have imagined that first emotional night. Through Spirit's rehabilitation, he had shown that true healing meant more than just recovery. It meant discovering new ways to experience the world's beauty, new paths to connection and joy. The sanctuary had become more than just a place of healing. It was a laboratory of hope, showing that with enough love, patience, and understanding, any challenge could become an opportunity for transformation. Thunder's wisdom continued to light the way, showing that the heart's vision was clearer than any physical sight. As stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Jack reflected on how far they'd come. The tears he'd shed following Thunder that first night had led them to discoveries that continued to change lives in ways he never could have predicted. Through Thunder's example, they had learned that every limitation held within it the seed of new possibilities, every challenge the potential for transformation. The night air carried the soft sounds of horses moving in harmony, Thunder, Starlight, and Spirit dancing their own constellation across the meadow. It was a dance of healing, of hope, of possibilities unlimited by physical constraints. In that moment, Jack understood that Thunder's greatest gift had been showing them all how to see with their hearts. The final chapter of Thunder's miraculous journey unfolded on a golden autumn morning, as falling leaves danced on the breeze across Whispering Meadows. Jack stood at the fence, watching his beloved horse move with deliberate grace through the Morning mist. There was something different about Thunder today, a sense of completion, of wisdom fully realized. The sanctuary had grown beyond anyone's wildest dreams. What began with one horse's compassionate act toward an injured fawn had blossomed into an international center for healing and hope. Rehabilitation centers worldwide now followed the Thunder method, their success rates testament to the profound wisdom of this remarkable horse. As Jack observed Thunder's morning routine, he noticed something extraordinary. The horse was gathering his students, Starlight, Spirit, and several other horses who had learned his methods. Together, they moved through the sanctuary in a choreographed dance of healing, each contributing their unique gifts to the work that had become their shared purpose. Dr. Chen, who had returned for one final documentation of Thunder's methods, watched in amazement. "This isn't just teaching anymore," he observed, his voice filled with wonder. "He's orchestrating a complete transfer of knowledge, ensuring his work will continue through generations." The morning's activities brought together all the threads of Thunder's legacy. Hope arrived with her growing family, now including 3 generations of deer who felt safe approaching the sanctuary. Shadow's pack emerged from the forest, their presence a reminder of how Thunder had bridged the gap between wild and domestic animals. Maya, now a confident teenager, led a group of visiting children through the sanctuary's programs. Her ability to translate Thunder's wisdom for young minds had become legendary, inspiring a new generation of animal healers. "Remember," she told her attentive audience, "every animal has a story to tell if we just learn how to listen." The sanctuary's success had created a ripple effect throughout the community. Local schools had incorporated programs based on Thunder's methods into their curriculum. Healthcare facilities regularly brought patients to experience the healing power of animal interaction. The bond between humans and animals had been strengthened in ways no one could have predicted. Emma, working alongside her father, had developed comprehensive training programs that combined traditional veterinary medicine with Thunder's intuitive approach to healing. "What Thunder showed us," she explained to a group of visiting veterinarians, "is that healing isn't just about treating symptoms. It's about restoring the spirit's connection to life itself." As the morning progressed, Thunder led his students to the creek where his journey began. There, in the dappled sunlight filtering through autumn leaves, he demonstrated one final lesson: the art of letting go. With infinite gentleness, he showed them how to recognize when their work was complete, when it was time to let their patients return to the wild. The moment was profound. Jack watched as understanding dawned in the eyes of Thunder's students. They weren't just learning techniques of healing, they were inheriting a philosophy of compassion that would continue long after Thunder's time had passed. Dr. Thompson, who had witnessed countless miracles at the sanctuary, observed the scene with tears in her eyes. "He's not just leaving a legacy," she said softly. "He's ensuring that his work will evolve, grow, and adapt to future needs. This is what true wisdom looks like." Thunder's impact had extended far beyond the boundaries of Whispering Meadows. His methods had revolutionized wildlife rehabilitation, changing how humans approach the healing of both animals and each other. The simple act of following a horse on a moonlit night had led to a transformation in how the world understood compassion. The sanctuary's residents, both permanent and temporary, seemed to sense the significance of this day. The air was filled with a peaceful energy as animals of all species gathered near Thunder and his students. Even the most recently arrived, patients showed unusual calm, as if understanding they were part of something extraordinary. Jack thought back to that first emotional night when tears had clouded his vision as he discovered Thunder's secret. Now he understood that those tears had been just the beginning of a journey that would touch countless lives and change countless hearts. Sarah's dream of creating a place of healing had been realized in ways she could never have imagined. Through Thunder's wisdom, Whispering Meadows had become more than a sanctuary. It was a living testament to the power of unconditional love and the endless possibilities that arose when hearts opened to one another. As the sun reached its zenith, Thunder led his students in one final demonstration of his methods. Together, they created a symphony of movement and energy that spoke directly to the hearts of all who witnessed it. It was as if every lesson, every moment of healing, every breakthrough was being distilled into a single powerful message of hope. The gathered crowd watched in reverent silence as Thunder completed his teaching. In that moment, everyone understood that they had been part of something truly miraculous, the creation of a legacy that would continue to heal and inspire for generations to come. Maya, standing beside Jack, spoke softly but with certainty. "This isn't an ending," she said, watching Thunder with wise eyes. "It's a beginning. Everything he taught us will keep growing, keep evolving. His love will keep spreading through all the lives he touched." Thunder's work had shown the world that true healing came not from power or control, but from gentleness and understanding. His methods had proved that the greatest transformations often began with the smallest acts of kindness, that the deepest wounds could be healed through patient, loving presence. As evening approached, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and purple, Thunder stood at the fence beside Jack. Their eyes met in a moment of perfect understanding. Teacher and student, healer and witness, two souls connected by a journey that had changed countless lives. The legacy of Thunder's compassion would live on through Starlight, Spirit, and all the others who had learned from his example. It would continue through Maya's teaching, through Emma's programs, through every life touched by the miracle of Whispering Meadows. Jack's tears that first night had been just the beginning, the start of a story that would inspire generations to come. Thunder had shown them all that love knew no boundaries, that healing knew no limits, that compassion could bridge any divide. As darkness settled over Whispering Meadows, the stars emerged one by one, their light reflecting in Thunder's wise eyes. The night was filled with the peaceful sounds of the sanctuary, the soft breathing of healing animals, the gentle rustling of leaves, the distant howl of Shadow's pack. Thunder's legacy was complete, but his work would continue through all those he had taught and inspired. The simple act of following his horse on a moonlit night had led Jack to discover not just a secret but a universal truth about the healing power of love. The story of Thunder and Whispering Meadows would be told and retold, inspiring others to open their hearts to the endless possibilities of compassion. It was a reminder that sometimes the greatest teachers came with 4 legs and a gentle soul, showing us that love was the most powerful medicine of all. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like and share it with others who might need its message of hope and healing. Remember that every act of kindness, no matter how small, has the power to change lives in ways we can never predict. May God bless you and guide you on your own journey of compassion and discovery. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.